The scent of pine and cinnamon usually fills our home with unparalleled joy during Christmas. It's a fragrance that has, for decades, been synonymous with laughter, warmth, and the comforting embrace of family. But this year, as the first snowflakes began to dance outside our window, a different kind of chill settled over our living room. It wasn't the kind that made you reach for a thicker blanket. It was the kind that seeped into your bones, born from unspoken words and simmering resentment. My daughter, Sarah, was meticulously arranging ornaments on the tree, her movements precise, almost mechanical. Her husband, Mark, my son-in-law, stood by the mantelpiece, his back to me, ostensibly admiring the festive garland. But I knew him well enough to recognize the rigid set of his shoulders, the way his hands were clasped tightly behind him. He was coiled, ready to strike, and I knew, with a sinking feeling, what was coming. "Dad," Mark began, his voice low, almost a growl, cutting through the soft Christmas carols playing in the background. Sarah flinched, a delicate glass angel slipping from her grasp. It shattered on the hardwood floor, a sharp, unwelcome sound that seemed to punctuate the tension. "Mark, what is it?" Sarah asked, her voice tight with a premonition of dread. She knew too. We all did. The air had been thick with it for weeks, ever since I'd mentioned Elias. I braced myself. Elias. My friend, my confidant, the man who had, against all odds, brought a flicker of light back into my life after years of quiet solitude following my wife's passing. He was kind, gentle, and possessed a quiet strength that I admired. He was also apparently anathema to Mark. Mark turned. His eyes, usually warm and friendly, were now cold, hard chips of ice. He looked directly at me, bypassing Sarah entirely. "Don't bring him to our Christmas," he stated, each word a hammer blow. "Not this year. Not ever." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. I felt a familiar heat rise in my chest, a mix of anger and profound disappointment. This wasn't just about Elias. It was about control, about Mark's need to dictate who belonged in our family circle, who was worthy of sharing our sacred holiday. "Mark, what are you talking about?" Sarah finally managed, her voice trembling. "Dad invited Elias weeks ago. He's a wonderful man." "You don't know him, Sarah," Mark retorted, his gaze still fixed on me, challenging. "Not really. And Dad, you know exactly why I'm saying this." My heart ached. I did know, or at least I knew what Mark thought he knew. A half-truth, a distorted rumor, a piece of Elias's past that had been twisted into something ugly and unforgivable. I had tried to explain it to Mark, to offer context, to plead for understanding, but his mind was made up. He had built a wall of judgment, impenetrable and unyielding. "Mark, this is my home," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my hands. "And Elias is my guest. He means a great deal to me. Then he can mean a great deal to you somewhere else." Mark shot back, his face contorted with a mixture of anger and something else. Fear? Disgust? I couldn't quite place it. Christmas is about family, and he is not family. The accusation stung. It implied that my choice, my happiness, was somehow a betrayal of our family. It implied that Elias, a man who had done nothing but show me kindness and companionship, was a threat. Sarah, caught between her husband and her father, looked utterly devastated. Her eyes darted between us, pleading for a resolution, a softening that wasn't coming. The shattered angel on the floor seemed to mock our fractured peace. This wasn't the Christmas spirit. This was a battle line drawn in the sand, and I knew with a heavy heart that the holiday season, usually a beacon of light, was about to descend into a darkness I hadn't anticipated. The question wasn't just if Elias would come, but what secrets Mark was truly guarding, and what it would cost us all to uncover them. The days leading up to Christmas became a minefield. Every conversation was carefully navigated, every silence pregnant with unspoken tension. Sarah, usually so vibrant and full of holiday cheer, moved through the house like a ghost, her laughter replaced by a quiet melancholy. She tried to mediate, to reason with Mark, but his resolve was ironclad. He would simply shake his head, his jaw tight, and repeat, "You don't understand, Sarah, it's for the best." But what was the best? For whom? My heart ached for my daughter, caught in the crossfire of a conflict she didn't fully grasp, and it ached for Elias, who, despite my assurances that he was still welcome, had begun to pull away. He sensed the friction, the unspoken disapproval, and his gentle nature recoiled from it. He called less, his voice tinged with a sadness that mirrored my own. "Arthur," he'd said one evening, his voice barely a whisper, "perhaps it's better if I just..." Stay away. I don't want to cause trouble for you. Nonsense, Elias. I'd insisted, though my conviction wavered. You are not trouble. You are a blessing. But even as I spoke the words, I felt the weight of Mark's judgment pressing down on me. I spent hours in my study, staring at the flickering embers in the fireplace, the silence amplifying my thoughts. My wife, Eleanor, had always been the peacemaker, the one who could smooth over any family dispute with her quiet wisdom and unwavering love. How I missed her now, her calming presence, her ability to see the good in everyone. She would have welcomed Elias with open arms, seen past any past mistakes, and embraced him for the man he was today. Mark's animosity towards Elias was rooted in something he'd heard, a story from Elias's distant past. Elias had been open with me about his struggles, his mistakes. He'd had a difficult youth, made some poor choices, and spent time in a correctional facility decades ago for a nonviolent offense, a youthful indiscretion involving a bad crowd and a misguided attempt to help a friend. He had paid his debt to society, rebuilt his life, and dedicated himself to helping others. He volunteered at a local animal shelter, mentored at-risk youth, and was a pillar of his small community. He was a changed man, a redeemed soul. But Mark, it seemed, only saw the past. He had a rigid sense of right and wrong, a black-and-white view of the world that left no room for nuance or redemption. He was a successful lawyer, meticulous and unyielding, and he applied the same strict principles to his personal life. Once a judgment was made, it was final. One afternoon, as I was trying to string lights on the outdoor bushes, Sarah approached me, her brow furrowed with concern. "Dad," she began, her voice hesitant, "Mark won't tell me what it is. He just says Elias is dangerous or untrustworthy, but he won't give me details. It's driving me crazy." I sighed, dropping a tangled string of lights. "It's an old story, sweetheart. Something from Elias's youth. He made a mistake, paid for it, and moved on. Mark just can't let it go." "But what kind of mistake?" she pressed, her eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and fear. "Was it violent? Is he a threat to us?" "No, Sarah, absolutely not," I assured her, my hand on her arm. "Elias is one of the kindest men I know. It was a non-violent offense a long time ago. He was young, foolish, and fell in with the wrong crowd. He spent his entire adult life making amends." Sarah looked unconvinced. The seed of doubt had been planted, not by me, but by Mark's vague accusations. "Why won't Mark tell me the specifics then? Why is he being so secretive if it's not that bad?" That was the question, wasn't it? Mark's secrecy was fueling Sarah's anxiety, turning a past mistake into a looming, undefined threat. It made me wonder if there was more to Mark's aversion than just Elias's past. Was there something else at play? A personal vendetta? A hidden agenda? I tried to explain Elias's story in more detail, the circumstances, the redemption, but Sarah's mind seemed to be racing. She was a lawyer like Mark, sharp and analytical, and she needed facts, not just my emotional assurances. "Dad," she said, her voice firming, "I need to know. If Mark won't tell me, I'll find out myself." A cold dread washed over me. Sarah, with her keen legal mind and relentless pursuit of truth, could uncover things I might not want her to. Not because Elias had anything to hide from her, but because the truth, when viewed through a lens of suspicion, could be easily distorted. I had hoped to protect Elias, to shield him from the judgment of others, but it seemed the truth, in its rawest form, was about to be unleashed. And I had a terrible feeling that when Sarah finally saw what Mark was hiding, it wouldn't just be about Elias's past, but about the true nature of the man she had married. The tension in our home was no longer just about Christmas. It was about the unraveling of trust, the exposure of secrets, and the potential fracturing of our family. The days dwindled, each one bringing us closer to Christmas Eve, and with it the inevitable confrontation. The festive decorations, once a source of comfort, now felt like a cruel mockery of the joy that was so conspicuously absent. Mark maintained his stony silence regarding Elias, his disapproval a palpable presence in every room. Sarah, true to her word, had begun her own investigation. I saw her late at night, the soft glow of her laptop illuminating her face, her brow furrowed in concentration. She was digging, searching for answers that Mark refused to provide. I tried to dissuade her gently, reminding her that some pasts are best left buried, especially when they belong to someone else. But Sarah, with her lawyer's tenacity, saw it as a matter of principle. "If Mark thinks Elias is a threat, I need to know why," she told me, her voice firm. "I can't just blindly accept his judgment, Dad, not when it's tearing our family apart." Her words echoed in my mind. tearing our family apart. It was true. The rift between Mark and me was widening, and Sarah was caught in the middle, her loyalty stretched thin. She loved Mark deeply, but she also loved me, and she was fiercely protective of our family's harmony. Elias, meanwhile, had become a phantom. He stopped answering my calls. His texts became sparse and formal. I knew he was hurting, withdrawing into himself, unwilling to be the cause of such discord. It broke my heart. I had found a genuine connection, a gentle soul who understood the quiet ache of loneliness. And now, because of a decades-old mistake, that connection was being severed. One evening, a few days before Christmas, I found Sarah in the living room, a stack of old documents and printouts spread across the coffee table. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and something akin to betrayal. "Dad," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "you need to see this." My stomach clenched. I knew this moment was coming, but it didn't lessen the impact. I sat beside her, my heart pounding. She pushed a faded newspaper clipping towards me. It was from a local paper, dated nearly 30 years ago. The headline screamed, "Local teen arrested in pharmacy robbery." Below it, a grainy photo of a young Elias, his face bruised, his eyes defiant. "This is what Mark was talking about, isn't it?" Sarah said, her voice trembling. "He was involved in a robbery. He served time." "Yes, Sarah," I admitted, my voice heavy. "He told me all of this. He was young, desperate, and coerced by older kids. He never hurt anyone. He was a lookout, and he cooperated fully with the police. He was given a reduced sentence because of his age and cooperation." Sarah nodded slowly, her eyes scanning the article. "It says here, he was with a group known for petty crimes, and one of them, a John Doe, was never identified." She looked up at me, a new unsettling question in her eyes. "Why didn't Mark tell me this directly? Why the secrecy?" "He has his reasons, I suppose," I mumbled, trying to sound nonchalant, but my mind was racing. Mark's extreme reaction, his refusal to discuss it, his insistence on Elias being dangerous, it felt disproportionate to the crime itself, especially given Elias's subsequent life. Then Sarah picked up another document, a printout from an online public record search. It was a list of names associated with the original police report, witnesses, and other individuals involved in the periphery of the case. Her finger traced down the list, then stopped abruptly. Her breath hitched. "Dad," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Look at this name." She pointed to a name on the list, a name that made my blood run cold. It was a name I knew, a name that was inextricably linked to our family. Mark Thomas, my son-in-law's full name, listed as a witness, but not just any witness. The report indicated he was a person of interest initially, someone who was present near the scene, but who had been cleared due to lack of evidence. A wave of nausea washed over me. Mark, involved in Elias's past? This was far more than a simple judgment. This was personal. This was a secret Mark had been hiding, not just from Sarah, but from me, from all of us. Sarah's face was a mask of shock, then dawning horror. Mark was there. He knew Elias back then. Why didn't he ever tell me? Her voice rose, laced with a raw pain I hadn't heard before. He made it sound like he just heard about Elias's past. He never said he was part of it. The tension in the room became unbearable. The Christmas lights outside seemed to dim, casting long, ominous shadows. The conflict was no longer just about Elias's past. It was about Mark's deception, his carefully constructed facade. Sarah had not just seen what he was hiding. She had seen the very foundation of their relationship begin to crack. The true nature of Mark's animosity towards Elias was not moral judgment, but a desperate attempt to bury his own complicity, his own connection to a past he desperately wanted to forget. And now, on the cusp of Christmas, that secret was out, threatening to unravel everything. The revelation hit us like a physical blow. Sarah, usually so composed, was shaking, her eyes blazing with a mixture of hurt and fury. "Mark was there," she repeated, her voice rising. "He was there. All these years, he let me believe he was just a concerned citizen, judging a man he barely knew. But he knew Elias. He was part of that world." I could only stare, my mind reeling. Mark, my son-in-law, the pillar of respectability, the man who had built a successful career on integrity and lawfulness, had a hidden past intertwined with Elias's. It explained everything. His vehemence, his secrecy, his disproportionate anger. He wasn't just judging Elias. He was trying to erase his own connection to a past he found shameful. Just then the front door opened and Mark walked in, whistling a cheerful Christmas tune, oblivious to the storm that had just broken. He stopped dead in his tracks, seeing Sarah holding the documents, her face a mask of accusation, and my own stunned expression. The festive mood he'd brought in shattered instantly. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice losing its cheer, a flicker of apprehension in his eyes. Sarah slowly stood up, the documents clutched in her trembling hand. "What's going on, Mark?" she said, her voice dangerously calm. "Is that I just found out you've been lying to me, to us, for years." Mark's face went pale. He glanced at the papers in her hand, his eyes widening in recognition, then fear. "Sarah, put those down. This isn't what you think." "Oh, I think it is exactly what I think," she retorted, her voice gaining strength. "You told me Elias was dangerous, a criminal. You forbade Dad from bringing him to Christmas, all because you were trying to bury your own past, your own connection to that robbery." "I was a kid, Sarah," Mark exploded, his composure cracking. "I was just a kid, in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was cleared. I had nothing to do with it. But you were there," I interjected, my voice firm, cutting through his bluster. "You knew Elias. You knew the circumstances. And yet you let us believe you were simply judging him from afar. You let me believe you were protecting Sarah, when all along you were protecting yourself." Mark ran a hand through his hair, his eyes darting between us, cornered. "It was a mistake, a stupid youthful mistake. I was scared. I didn't want it to follow me. I built a life, Sarah. A good life. I didn't want that old dirt dug up. So you demonized Elias instead?" Sarah's voice was laced with bitter disappointment. "You used his past, his redemption, as a shield for your own secret? You made him out to be a monster so no one would look too closely at your involvement?" He looked away, unable to meet her gaze. The silence was deafening, filled only by the frantic beating of my own heart. The truth, raw and ugly, hung in the air. Mark had not just been a witness. He had been part of the periphery, someone who had been questioned, someone who had been close enough to the edge of trouble to be implicated. He had escaped, perhaps by luck, perhaps by clever maneuvering, but the shame of it had clearly haunted him. And Elias, the one who had paid the price, became the convenient scapegoat, the living reminder of a past Mark desperately wanted to erase. "I was afraid," Mark finally mumbled, his voice barely audible. "Afraid you'd see me differently. Afraid it would ruin everything we built." "And what about what you've ruined now?" Sarah asked, her voice cracking. "The trust? The honesty? You let Dad suffer. You let Elias be ostracized, all to protect your image. Do you know how much that hurts?" Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, not just for Elias, not just for me, but for the man she thought she knew. The perfect, upright husband was suddenly flawed, human, and deeply deceptive. The Christmas spirit, already fragile, shattered completely. The climax wasn't a shouting match, but a quiet, devastating unraveling. The secret wasn't just Elias's past. It was Mark's complicity, his fear, and his willingness to sacrifice others to protect his own carefully constructed facade. And as Sarah looked at her husband, the man she loved, she saw a stranger, a man capable of profound deception. The revelation wasn't just about what he was hiding, but about who he truly was. And the question now was, could they ever rebuild the trust that had been so carelessly broken? The days following the revelation were somber. Christmas Eve came and went, a quiet, subdued affair. Mark, humbled and ashamed, tried to apologize, but the words felt hollow, weighed down by years of deception. Sarah was devastated. The man she had married, the man she had built a life with, had proven himself capable of a profound betrayal of trust. She needed space, time to process, to grieve the loss of the illusion she had lived under. Mark moved into the guest room, and the silence between them was louder than any argument. I too felt a deep sense of disappointment, but also a strange kind of relief. The truth, however painful, was finally out. The air, once thick with unspoken tension, was now clear, albeit cold. My priority became healing, not just for Sarah, but for Elias, and for our fractured family. I called Elias. He answered, his voice hesitant. "Arthur," he said, "I heard, about Mark." "Yes, Elias," I confirmed, my voice gentle. The truth came out. Sarah knows everything, and she understands. There was a long pause, then a sigh of relief from his end. "I never wanted to cause trouble," he repeated, his voice tinged with sadness. "You didn't cause trouble, my friend," I assured him. "Mark did, and now we can finally move past it." I want you here, Elias, for Christmas or for whatever comes next. You are family. He hesitated, then a quiet warmth entered his voice. Thank you, Arthur, that means more than you know. On Christmas Day, Elias came. It was a quiet gathering. Mark was there too, sitting awkwardly at the far end of the table, his usual boisterousness replaced by a subdued silence. Sarah was still distant with him, but she greeted Elias with a genuine warmth that brought tears to my eyes. She had seen the truth, not just of Mark's deception, but of Elias's character. She saw the kind, gentle man I knew, and she embraced him without judgment. We didn't have the boisterous, laughter-filled Christmas we usually did, but we had something more profound: honesty. We had a quiet understanding, a fragile peace built on the rubble of shattered illusions. Elias, sensing the lingering tension, was gracious and unassuming. He spoke little of the past, focusing instead on the present, on the simple joy of shared company. In the weeks that followed, Sarah and Mark began the slow, arduous process of rebuilding. It wasn't easy. Trust, once broken, is a delicate thing to mend. Sarah insisted on therapy, on open communication, on a complete reckoning with Mark's past and his motivations. Mark, to his credit, seemed genuinely remorseful and committed to earning back her trust. He began to volunteer at the same animal shelter as Elias, a quiet act of atonement, a way to connect with the man he had wronged and perhaps to find a path to his own redemption. As for me, I found a renewed sense of peace. Elias became a regular presence in my life, a true friend, a part of our family. He was there for quiet dinners, for long walks, for the simple companionship that had been missing for so long. Our Christmas that year was not what I had envisioned, but it was, in its own way, a profound one. It was a Christmas of truth, of forgiveness, and of the quiet, powerful strength of a family choosing to heal, even when the path was uncertain. My daughter had seen what he was hiding, and in doing so, she had not only uncovered a painful truth, but also opened the door for a deeper, more honest connection within our family. The hidden secret had threatened to destroy us, but ultimately, it became the catalyst for a more authentic, resilient love.